Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Pokemon Legends Arceus both released this year. That's a lot of Pokemon in one year, and both games did things that the other one didn't. So the question becomes, which one did things better? Let's go over a few categories. And today, to talk about this, we are joined by Dustygogoat. Everyone give him a warm welcome.
What's up, everyone? It's Dustygogoat.
Dusty, it's everyone's favorite category that we're going to start with. It's the one that gets everyone going, and we're going to be seeing some rage comments in the comment section. But let's talk about the graphics and visuals to start. Which game do you think has better graphics and visuals, and why?
Yeah, so I think Legends Arceus definitely has the better aesthetic, right? Legends Arceus does not have necessarily the cleanest overhaul in graphics. I think that's what it would be, right? Yeah. I think the textures are better in Scarlet and Violet. I also think Scarlet and Violet is like very bright. Legends Arceus almost has this like brown dour. I mean, there are pretty scapes, but you know, when you're flying overhead, actually, honestly, both games when you're flying overhead, everything is just like flat and pixelated. So yeah, for me, I think Pokemon Legends Arceus is the better aesthetic. I feel like I'm actually in a timepiece. It feels like I've been transported into the Pokemon universe. Scarlet and Violet, while they do have great textures, I think the biggest issue is really performance.
Yeah, I think most people agree with you on that. Something that you mentioned is actually pretty large, and that was that you feel like you're transported into the world of Pokemon when playing Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Yeah.
I think I agree with that because the cell shading goes such a long way in making you feel like you're in like the anime or the manga.
Yeah,
and
that's huge.
You're right. Like when you're playing Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it almost feels like you're playing a different game with Pokemon included in it. It's kind of odd in that regard. Like there's no clear art style to it. It's kind of just like, here's the assets, enjoy, you know?
Yeah,
and then like you said, the performance isn't good. So like that doesn't help.
Yeah. But I really wonder how much of an issue or how much of an impact the performance really is having on me as like, you know, and how much that influences the way I'm enjoying the game. Because honestly, I think I've always like, you know, my defense when I was 13 was like, I like Nintendo games because they perform well and there's no loading and it just feels like a solid package, right? It feels like a toy. It's like a toy never loads and a Nintendo game never loads. I always liked Pokemon games because of that. And this game in BDSP have felt so strange. They don't even feel like part of the same series. Like I never thought this would be the reality where you get a game so buggy, right? Like the first time I played Skyrim, I couldn't, or GTA, I couldn't stand the bugs. I'm like, what is going on? Like, it makes me uncomfortable that I might play for 5 hours and then lose progress because I get like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's. I wonder how much the performance is really bothering me, and it is gonna leave a lasting impression for me on Scarlet and Violet. Because Pokemon Legends Arceus, I never had to worry about that.
Yeah, there's no performance issues in Pokemon Legends, which is insane because the game is more involved than Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet exists almost exclusively in menus. Yet somehow they managed to botch that. I don't understand how, why. I know it's because they hire newbie developers every time, but like, it's insane that the traditional style games exist almost exclusively in menus, and yet they don't look or perform well. And like you said with Nintendo, usually that Nintendo seal of approval means something. It usually means like the game is going to run well, even if it's not the prettiest thing, you know? Yeah. And we got that with Pokemon Legends, but we did not have that with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And
hey, Johnny, is there a way we could like almost compare Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet to like what would the equivalence be to like a Legend of Zelda game? Like, is Legends Arceus like Wind Waker? Where like what would Scarlet and Violet be?
I would compare Legends Arceus more to Breath of the Wild personally.
Okay.
And
I'm thinking art style, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay.
I would compare it to Breath of the Wild, the newest Zelda game, and I would compare Scarlet and Violet to
like Twilight.
No, not even, because those are like dingy, like realistic graphics. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's probably more like Ocarina of Time. on the Nintendo 64. And it's funny because a lot of the times I do look at the assets on Scarlet and Violet, I'm like, that looks worse than a Nintendo 64 game. So I would definitely put Scarlet and Violet more akin to like the Nintendo 64 Zelda games, and put Legends Arceus more towards Breath of the Wild, which is a huge jump. And there's no joke with it. Like that's how much better I think Legends Arceus looks. And it goes beyond even just the art style. Like you mentioned, there is some things about the art style, you know, like there is like a darker tone to Legends Arceus. Even though it's cell shaded, they have a more muted color palette because they wanted a more serious tone for the game. You know, it exists in a very archaic time period and things like that. But there's still some beautiful vistas that don't have that. You know, like when you go to the beach area or when you go to the snow area, you don't have those more muted color palettes. But when you're in the mountains or when you're in the Obsidian Fieldlands even, you have the more muted colors that are more serious looking. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet always stays vibrant, but again, it doesn't really seem to have an art style per se. It's
it
like
really
a
doesn't.
mishmash of
When we
different
first
things.
saw, I'm sorry to interrupt. The first reveal trailer, the characters looked like somewhere on the Uncanny Valley. The player characters, they did not even look. They didn't look like Pokemon characters. They didn't even look. They just did not look like children. Like they looked so unappealing. And I feel like they definitely came a long way. But I would say Sword and Shield has the best art style on the Switch titles. Can we have that conversation?
I thought Sword and Shield's art style was really good. I still prefer Legends because the characters, I think, looked more developed and fit into the world more.
Okay, that's fair.
More, as they should have, because you know you had to do more in that game than just existing in menus. Sword and Shield though was very close to Legends Arceus. They're not too different. I think Legends Arceus just has the better proportions for characters. That's fair, that's the only difference. And I think they share a very similar art style, and both look great when in like a still. Obviously Sword and Shield doesn't look good in motion, but they both look good in stills, and Legends Arceus looks good in motion on top of in stills.
Yeah, and like in the overworld, the main difference is that like in Legends Arceus, if you see a mountain, you can travel to the mountain.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, and Sword and Shield, that's not the case. But it's even more true in Scarlet and Violet, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay, sure.
As far as the art style goes, Scarlet and Violet doesn't really have like a set art style. It's actually weird because you have this huge juxtaposition of the Pokemon models who sometimes have like some really good textures, and then these environments that are textureless, and your characters who have like really good texture clothes, but then their skin and nothing else about them has good textures. It's the weirdest thing. There's no dedicated art style in Scarlet and Violet, whereas Pokemon Legends definitely had a dedicated art style. It had better assets, I would say, too, and just more cohesiveness throughout.
I think that's true for the two games in the Switch era that have had a dedicated art style is Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee and Legends Arceus. I would say BDSP, Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet are all kind of a mishmash of different feels.
Yeah, you're right. I could kind of see like Sword and Shield looked like it had the idea for what it wanted to be its art style, but not everything got finished. Yes. So because of that, it looked like a mismatch. Whereas Scarlet and Violet just looks like they purposely chose not to give it cell shading, and they purposely chose to just like let the textures and lack thereof just show in all their lack of glory. So, I think after everything we've said, it's pretty obvious by now. You and I both agree that Pokemon Legends Arceus is the superior one in the graphics and visuals category.
I would agree with that. I think I wanted to just say one more thing about how like the way the textures on some of these Pokemon, let's say like steel type Pokemon, right? I feel like these textures making these steel type Pokemon actually look metallic changes my understanding of like what their biology would be in the universe. I think it's got a long way to really, like, you can see Pikachu now, and instead of just being like this like anamorphous like yellow, mouse, it actually has fur. It actually looks like a little bit like a creature, but not so uncanny that it, like something out of Detective Pikachu, right? Because I definitely don't want to see Pokemon going into that direction in the future. I do not want it to be hyper realistic, right?
Yeah,
I think Legends. If we get, I would say if we get another Legends game, even if it's cell shaded, I still think they could probably. I mean, maybe you could better explain if it's possible, but I would think that they'd be able to give the Scarlet and Violet textures to Pokemon in a new cell shaded Legends style game.
It's funny you say that, actually. I was about to bring up a point that I think again, Pokemon Legends I think did this perfectly, because they did have the updated models with their new textures in Pokemon Legends Arceus. You can actually see the textures through the cell shading, and I thought that was perfect. Some of them you kind of have to look a little further, or a little closer, I should say, for like the fur texture. And maybe not all of them actually had it, but I know that a lot of them notably had textures added to them, like Gyarados and Lucario had their textures for their scales and their fur, and you could see them in Legends Arceus when you were up close to them, but from far away, the cell shading really covered for the models looking good from far away too. Whereas in Scarlet and Violet, the models all look really bad from far away, and then when you get up close, they look decent, because you can see those textures. But in Legends, it was the same. You could look up close and you would see the textures for the Pokemon who had those updated textures for their models, for their updated models, but also had cell shading to cover for when the camera's pulled back. And it just looked, again, more cohesive. Scarlet and Violet doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that that's the best.
Legends Arceus knocks it out of the park because it stays consistent.
Yeah, it does. Yep. And so I think that it's covered. That Pokemon Legends Arceus definitely wins this category.
We got a winner,
hands down. So let's go ahead and talk about our next category. And this is something that I find interesting, and I want to hear your opinions on it, because Pokemon interaction is such a huge component of the Pokemon series, and yet these games both succeed, in my opinion, on Pokemon interaction, but they do it in very different ways. Yeah. I think you might actually have a different opinion than me on this, but I'm curious to hear your side, so go right ahead.
I do think there's a lot of crossover here. I think when these games were being developed, there was probably some like collaboration between the two different teams, and maybe not reusing assets, but definitely reusing ideas. I think there's a couple different ways to really interpret Pokemon interactions in these games. You have Pokemon, how they are interacting with the real world. So Pokemon, I'm thinking of like a Pokemon battling in water. It's got that little flotation device. We see that in both games. I think I really like seeing wild Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. I think more so than Legends Arceus. Maybe I'm forgetting, but do the Pokemon in Legends Arceus interact with each other? Because I feel like they do that in Scarlet and Violet.
They definitely interact more in Scarlet and Violet with each other.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the overworld, like wild ones. Yeah.
And it does feel, I think, I like how the Pokemon disappear and they respawn, in different versions of the Pokemon respawn in different locations. My biggest problem with wild Pokemon in Legends Arceus was that it was all static. Like, if you go to the same spot, you're always going to get that same group of Chatot, right? Unless it's at night, and then it's going to be Drifloon. So I think that is a point. I think Scarlet and Violet does that much better. That's a point for Scarlet and Violet. But then things start falling apart for me when we talk about interacting with your own Pokemon in the overworld. Things like ride Pokemon, things like following Pokemon, things like playing with your Pokemon in the overworld. I think Picnic was a little bit of a disappointment. I don't know. What do you think?
I disagree with a few things, actually.
Okay, that's fine. Let's get into it.
You mentioned that. Let's start with what I agree with. I definitely agree that the wild Pokemon are portrayed better in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, even though I hate, the sheer number of wild Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet is actually a detriment, because we're going back to, you touch a Pokemon, you start a Pokemon battle.
Yeah.
So like in that regard, I hate it. I hate how many there are because I'm always accidentally running into them and I have to wait at least like 10 to 20 seconds before I can run away from the battle and just get back to my adventure. But
Can I counterpoint?
Go ahead.
Can I counterpoint to your counterpoint?
Go ahead.
To your first section of the counterpoint?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think those overworld encounters would not be an issue if you had the option to capture these Pokemon, without even engaging in battle, right?
Yeah.
If that option was there,
100%.
I think I would not mind at all being able to engage with battle. Like they should have done it like Legends.
They should have.
Yeah.
Especially with more, there's even more Pokemon than in Legends this time. There's
Yeah.
more on screen at a time, and there's more grouping around you. They definitely should have. This game should have had Legends overworld mechanics. 100%.
I feel spoiled, man. I feel spoiled with Legends Arceus to complete the decks. You could just run around and throw Pokeballs, and that was so much fun. And in this game, I'm like, I don't even want to enter a battle because I don't want to have to throw my quick ball, have it fail, then battle it, and then it knocks itself out. Like, I don't want to have to do any of that. Like, I just want to like run around the region, throw Pokeballs. That was so much fun.
And especially when you find a big group of the same Pokemon, you want to catch them all, right? But you can't
Yeah.
in this game because it takes so long, and then they'll run away by the time you finish the battle, so they won't be there anymore anyways. So it's like you have to like pick one out of the group, and then it just feels very unnatural. But
Yeah, I
back
agree.
to like how they actually interact with each other in the wild is great. Like you said, like you see them like wild Pokemon will like yell at each other. They'll circle around one who's like a leader or someone that they're like either bullying or trying to protect. Like I saved a Phanpy one time from being bullied by a bunch of other Pokemon.
That's cool.
Yeah, like I enjoyed that. But when it comes to your own Pokemon, I think that Scarlet and Violet and Legends Arceus actually, like, it's hard to pick a clear winner there because they just interact in different ways. Like the like they follow you in Legends or in Scarlet and Violet.
That. Yeah.
And the follow mechanic is actually really good in Scarlet and Violet. So
The let's go feature. We didn't even write that down, but the let's go feature, I like that a lot.
yeah, I agree. And like you use that, so like that's how you use your Pokemon, right? You can use the Let's Go feature to battle in the overworld, and you can also when your Pokemon is out following you, they will pick up items for you. So that is how you're kind of working with your Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. It's definitely not as good as Legends. So like in Legends, you would have to manually throw your Pokemon out anytime you needed them. It felt more like a partnership because of that. Because you
were
always
actually
had access
engaged
to
with
them.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you could access any Pokemon on the fly. Whereas you have to go into a menu in Scarlet and Violet. But
that's a great point. Yeah.
But
I think there's a value to having certain, not difficulties, but like requiring the player to actually put in some effort, I think is good, right? Like they are trying to simplify it where you don't need to, like, this is the trade-off. In Legends, you could capture without battling. In Scarlet and Violet, you can battle without battling, right?
Yeah. But
I feel
again,
like
you can't switch your Pokemon on the fly in Scarlet and Violet, so it feels like an incomplete idea. Again,
it does.
You have to like go into a menu, wait, like the slow menus that they botched, like 5 to 10 seconds just to switch a different lead Pokemon in and use them for the Let's Go mechanic. Like it's not intuitive, and it doesn't make me really appreciate the interaction with the Pokemon as much, because in Legends, we were spoiled, like you said. Like we were able to switch Pokemon on the fly, take whichever one we needed at any point in time out at any moment, and use them for whatever we needed. We used them to break environmental obstacles. We used them to mine for resources. You could use them to pick up items. You could use them to save yourself from being attacked from the wild Pokemon. Like there was so much there that made you feel so close to your team in Legends Arceus. Like you were bonded in this kinship, whereas in Scarlet and Violet, it feels almost more exclusive. Like you have to pick one favorite at any point in time and stick with them for a while, and then you can switch later. But like in Legends Arceus, it felt like your entire team was a part of, like, an extension of you,
Yeah.
And in Scarlet and Violet, one thing both games do similarly is that you can take all your Pokemon out at once, right? In Legends, you can do it anywhere. You can take your Pokemon out anywhere, and you can do it manually in any order. You can like put them together in like the different ways for different chains of communication. If you throw them at each other, they'll talk to each other. They'll switch who they talk to. You can interact with them yourself. You can talk to them. You can do different poses to get different responses out of them. In Scarlet and Violet, the equivalent to that is Pokemon Picnic, which is, I think it's a great mechanic. Like, you can open it, again, almost anywhere in the overworld. All of them come out, including your legendary. You can kick ball with them. They'll play around with each other. You can wash them, which I really enjoy. And then you can make food for them, and that'll heal them and give them experience, just like Pokemon Camp back in Sword and Shield, which you and I agree is the best feature from Sword and Shield. It's about, I think it's hard to say. You lose a lot and you gain a lot, both from Sword and Shield and from Pokemon Legends with Pokemon Picnic. And so it's really hard to pick a clear winner, but the more that I talk about this, I think I'm still going with Legends Arceus.
Me too, yeah, I am as well.
Because like I said, like, you have complete and full access to your entire team in Legends Arceus at any moment, and it makes you feel closer to all of them because of that. So I think Pokemon interaction. Oh, and then riding Pokemon. That's another one. Yeah. You can ride different Pokemon in Legends Arceus, whereas you only ride your legendary, which feels kind of cheap in Scarlet and Violet.
I will say, so I do have a lot of ideas. Let's get to ride Pokemon, but let me, before that, for me, Legends was so special with the overworld animation, or the overworld interaction with your Pokemon, because you weren't limited, right? You could only toss out a couple. You could toss them out and then watch them interact, and you could literally do it anywhere. If you could stand in that location, you could throw your Pokemon out. Yep. Because of all the fun that I had in Legends, I was also thinking in Scarlet and Violet that, how fun would it be to get onto certain rooftops, right, in these beautiful cities, right, or in these mountainscapes, and toss my Pokemon out and interact with them in these like bizarre environments. Yes. And so many times you'd get that classic, like, Professor Oak says this is not the right time to use this. Like, that's the message that I just kept seeing, and that felt very limiting when all I would want to do is just toss out, a couple Pokemon. I think also something that we didn't touch on is being able to, like, go into first person perspective, right? In order to interact with our Pokemon that way. Like the camera is also very limiting in Scarlet and Violet, where I can't zoom in. There were a lot of times where I wanted to zoom into my Pokemon, and I couldn't do that.
Same. I feel like there's a distance forced between us and our Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, whereas in Legends, you're right, I forgot, we can go into first person mode at any time, and I used to do this all the time. Yeah, and just like see them up close and like.
And they're like dancing, they're playing with each other, they're like fighting. I love it. Or if they're paralyzed from battle, and then you see what they're actually like in the overworld. See, that's something else that wasn't in Scarlet and Violet. And I also think maybe this is, I don't know if this is in this category. What is it?
While you think about that, there's a huge one I just thought of, and it was the fact that when you're in battle in Scarlet and Violet versus Pokemon Legends, in Scarlet and Violet, the camera only lets you pan in a way that shows your Pokemon and the opposing Pokemon and their trainer. But you can never get the camera to pan behind your trainer with your Pokemon, making you feel like you're on the same side. You can only do it from the opposite way, where you see from the opposing Pokemon's view to see us. Yeah. And in Legends, the camera was always behind your trainer, so it always felt like you and your Pokemon, whereas in Scarlet and Violet, it feels like just your Pokemon, like you threw them out there, they're on their own. Like, I don't like that.
I think the bigger conversation that I've touched on before that applies to all of these categories is that I think the Pokemon's really trying to differentiate these experimental game designs and game experiences, and try to separate those from the main series, right? So Legends Arceus, Let's Go, even BDSP introduced a lot of different ways to play a Pokemon game, but separate from the like the core, whatever you want to call it, the core titles. And I think we get a little bit of sprinkles of all these different ways to play, but like the mechanics or the button layout or whatever you want to call it, is not, like, they have to simplify it in a way where it's just like it's more accessible, but maybe less dynamic.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, you're right. I don't know if this goes for this category, but I do know that Pokemon Legends made a point to have a cohesiveness with that it's going in a different direction, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Scarlet and Violet feels like it's trying to go in a different direction while also satisfying the traditional formula, which is those those Pokemon battles and battling a Pokemon to catch it, this and that, right?
Yeah.
It completely juxtaposes the Let's Go mechanic, for instance, and it feels disjointed. So I didn't feel that in Legends Arceus. Like, it just felt like they knew what they wanted to do and they did.
I think it comes down to options, right? With Legends, like we said, you could have your Pokemon, you could capture the Pokemon without entering battle, or you could engage with them in battle. And there were a lot of options in that way. So, yeah, that's just something to think about.
So, Dusty, in the topic of Pokemon interaction, which game do you think wins out on this particular topic?
For me, the overworld interactions with your Pokemon, being able to send them out at any point, going to that first-person perspective, the options of being able to spin the camera in battle, I feel like there's a lot of player and Pokemon freedom and choice. So I have to give it to Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Yeah, I agree. With Pokemon interaction, just like talking about it, I wasn't sure before going into this video because it seemed like they both did really good things, but the more we talked about it, the more we realized that you can utilize your entire team constantly in Pokemon Legends. It just makes you feel closer to the entire team, which I think is huge for Pokemon interaction. So I'm also going to go with Pokemon Legends here.
I missed the left and right bumper, just like cycling through my Pokemon and my items. Like, you can't do that.
I don't know why they took that away. That would have worked for the traditional formula too.
It really would have.
Yeah. So yeah, Pokemon Legends wins. And then next we talk about something that I think is going to take us in a completely different direction, and that is the region design.
Yeah.
Out of the two regions, Hisui and Paldea, which one do you prefer and why?
I think, again, I mean, there's some things that are clouding my judgment, like visuals, right? But I think region design, if we're talking about like the raw layout of the map, it's got to go to Scarlet and Violet.
Why?
It's bigger. There's tunnels. There is like there. It feels like there's these like natural landscapes, right? I love that you can actually. It's a dumb, cheap, open world. It's like why people always say they like to play open world games. If you see a mountain, you can go to the mountain, right? It's cheap, but it's satisfying, and I like that a lot. Again, like we said earlier, and the Pokemon spawn in at different ratios, so you're not always getting the same Pokemon over and over again.
Yeah. Okay. It's like you said, the ability to see a mountain and be able to know that you can traverse it, I think, is a huge power for a video game, and you can't do that in Legends. You can do that in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The entirety of what you see is traversable, and that's huge because, especially getting to go on a journey with your Pokemon and be able to take your Pokemon out in those locations is so pivotal to the Pokemon dream that Scarlet and Violet just nails that, whereas Legends couldn't, because it was made differently. It was made as a different kind of game. It wasn't fully open world. It was more of sandboxes. And Paldea, not only do you have the ability to go anywhere that you see, but I think that the general layout of Paldea is actually really nice, especially the cities and towns. Yeah. I think that they're gorgeous when it comes to not even just visuals, but also just like design, and by visuals I mean like aesthetics, not necessarily the graphics, but aesthetics and vision that we can see portrayed in these towns and cities is so cool, and to be able to traverse them in like an unlimited way is also really cool with your Pokemon. And then the routes leading up to them are also nicely constructed. They're very maze-like. You can get lost pretty easily, and I like that. And even the vistas in the routes are also very gorgeous and nice to traverse. There's a vision behind them as well a lot of the times. And yeah, I like how they kept landmarks with the towers, so you know like where you are, even though the layouts are pretty confusing oftentimes in the routes. So you get lost, but also it's not like so lost that you feel like it's all just kind of like a procedurally generated overworld. It's very well done. So I think You and I both agree, pretty hands down, that Paldea and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet win this category.
Yeah, I do want to say a couple more things. I do think I think the benefit of playing through Hisui is that there are a lot of. I feel like there's more things to interact with, while there's a wider pool of Pokemon to interact with in Paldea. And like I said, they're varying encounters, so it feels a little bit more natural and unpredictable. I do like how there are trees and there are rocks and boulders to destroy in Hisui. I kind of miss that a little bit. When I'm running through the region, there are a lot of items to pick up, but that's not really like a puzzle or a challenge. It's just like a random pickup. And maybe it really wouldn't make that big of a difference if it was implemented into Paldea, but I do want to give credit to Legends for that. I feel like, what are some other things? I mean,
there's actually an important side note to one of the things you just said, that you're right, we should give this credit to Hisui. I still don't think it makes it win the category, but it is a huge thing that I think Paldea should have done, and that is interactable objects in the overworld. Not only should there have been more and better ways to interact with them in Paldea, but the resources and items that you gather in Hisui blended into the environment in a way that they blended into the environment, but were also noticeable that those are resources that you can gather. They looked natural, but also stood out. And something that Scarlet and Violet and Paldea get so wrong is that everything's a Pokeball with a beam of light above it in Paldea, and it looks unnatural. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't blend in with the environment, while also maintaining that luster of, yes, that is an item I can pick up. It's just like, oh, there's an item I can pick up. It's a Pokeball. It doesn't fit in, but this is a video game, right? Whereas playing in Hisui, it's like I don't have to constantly get reminded that I'm playing in a video game. I feel more immersed in the environment because it's like I'm gathering the resources. But in Paldea, even with how great the region is, and though I still think it wins this category, the materials and resources that you gather along the way break your immersion.
Hisui even had breakable boxes and treasure chests. That you could, right? And the treasure chest would be on the coasts, on the beaches. They would actually be in. This is one more thing that I really liked about Hisui, because Hisui was so small in scale, right? I think a lot of people were like disappointed originally, like, oh, it's not actually open world. But because it was small in scale, they could put very deliberate things that were unique for the setting, right? Or for that area of the map. Like they would put, I don't know, I'm thinking of the ice caves. I'm also thinking of the pirate ships that were, or the pirate ship that was like crashed. And it was just, you could explore it. You could hide underneath it, go on top of it. There's kind of a story, like an untold story there, ripe for like a Pokemon YouTube theory video. I don't know, I feel like the landmarks are also a lot more striking. Burned in my brain are those two arches that look like pincers, like the Pokemon pincers, just jutting out of the water, right? Or even like that part of the beach in Hisui has like these like strips of land. I don't know why, but it's like so striking to me.
It makes a claw shape too.
Yeah, I can't get that out of my mind. And there's a lot of areas in Paldea, that haven't really struck out to me like that, other than the post game in Area Zero. Area Zero is like beautiful.
I haven't even gotten there yet, so.
Okay, so I don't want to. Okay,
yeah, I'm excited.
Good that you told me that. Yeah, before I go off. But those are things that I missed that I think they can improve in Generation 10, or if you don't want to go that far, even in just the next remake or whatever, even DLC, right? I feel like DLC is inevitable for Scarlet and Violet. So I think there's a lot of cool things that they could do.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna give this to Paldea.
Yeah, I still give it to Paldea. And just like also Pokemon living naturally in Paldea is really cool. Like some of them live in trees. That's a great point. Whereas you don't see that really in Legends. And
have you seen Fortress up in the trees?
Not yet. I want to.
It's so cool, and they're metallic. They have this like metallic bodies, so they're just like stuck to the tree. It's really cool.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I've seen Pachirisu and those like spider Pokemon in trees, but that's it.
Cool. I haven't seen Pachirisu.
Yeah, I saw.
Look at I saw it climb up a tree. That's awesome. There's still more for me to discover.
Yeah. All right. So I guess you said we both do agree that Paldea still wins this category for region design.
Yeah,
cool.
Paldea gets it, but it's got to step up its game a little bit.
Yeah. Hisui still has a lot of things that it did right that Paldea doesn't do. But yeah. Okay. Paldea and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet wins the category for region design. Now let's talk about the music. And this is totally subjective, right?
Sure.
I want to preface this. This is obviously always up to personal taste, but I do have some very strong opinions on this. I'll let you start though.
So I kind of messed up. I played a lot of Scarlet and Violet, like most of my playthrough without the music on, because I was playing it on a TV where there's other people in the house, where I live. I would keep the volume down and I'd have headphones in and I would listen to podcasts. And I kind of missed out because once I got to Area Zero, the music is like some of the best music in Pokemon that I've ever heard.
Oh, is it?
But I actually feel like I'm maybe not too equipped to answer this properly. I think Legends Arceus has some of the best music. Just like it's a vibe, man. It's like it all sounds not the same, but like they kind of reference old Sinnoh music, right? Music from Gen 4. They remix it into this like old school. I don't know. It's got a vibe. It's nostalgic. It's calming. It's very like atmospheric. So that's a whole vibe that you don't hear in other Pokemon games, and I love that for what it is. But I don't feel too familiar with the Paldean music, right?
So I'll let you know now. You're not missing out on much with the
okay
Paldean music. I'm about to have some very harsh words for Scarlet and Violet's OST, and that is the amount of notes that play in the songs is very limited. So let's talk about the fact that not only are there a limited amount of notes in each music track in Scarlet and Violet, at least for the most part. There are some good ones, but for the most part, especially the root music, it's only like 8 notes max, maybe, just repeated ad nauseum. And
really,
this is an issue that I had with like Lumio City's OST back in like X and Y, but that issue that I had with that particular music track is persistent around all of Paldea. And not
really?
only is it repetitive, but they play the same root music in the entire region.
Really?
There's some slight variations, like one part of the region you go to and it changes the instruments. Then you go to another, or you start writing Miraidon and Koraidon, and it like makes it a little more exciting sounding, but it's still the same 8 notes ad nauseum over and over again. And it's not a good 8 note. In my opinion, it's not a good 8 notes.
Okay.
It's really boring. And it's really annoying almost. It's almost like the kind of music that you put on to drive someone crazy. And it feels like they do that a lot. Now, there is some good music in Scarlet and Violet. There's like some good battle themes. You said Area Zero is apparently a standout.
I've been humming Area Zero like all day. It just gets in my head and I hum it and it's beautiful.
That's good.
That is really good.
Yeah.
So I guess just to add on to what you're saying, like I feel like older like the first couple generations of Pokemon games, I guess the first 2 generations, they would repeat some themes in different locations, right? If you're battling like the hardest trainer, Lance and Red have the same soundtrack. I'm thinking there's like Azalea Town, and I'm thinking Johto right now.
Yeah,
there are a couple towns
repeats,
that share theme songs, and I think that was kind of fine. But I think I don't know. I feel like Pokemon,
The difference there is that it's not just repeating 8 notes though. So let's take we can use that Johto music as an example real quick. Say like Olivine City and Violet City had the same theme, but
yes,
they had like a constantly evolving melody that would go on, and there were several segments to the song that would go back into each other. So it wasn't just the same 8 notes over and over and over again. It was like 16 notes and then a different like 24 notes and then a different like 16 notes and then repeat again, so like that's completely different. But for a better example, let's look at Pokemon Legends Arceus. Every single music track in Pokemon Legends Arceus was a banger. Why is that? Because they had clear melodies. For one, That's one thing. They had a clear melody. There's not really so much as a melody in Scarlet and Violet's music tracks, especially the root music, as much as just repeating of notes that like kind of like give you like a thing to like go like this to, you know? Like it gives you like something to like bob your head to, but it's just 8 notes over and over again. Whereas in Pokemon Legends Arceus, you have a melody that constantly changes throughout the song. There's several phases throughout the songs.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
The thing that Pokemon Legends Arceus in particular does different from any previous Pokemon game is that the songs all have a clear beginning and a clear end. So they only play, I think, midday, once per day. And they have a clear beginning and a clear end, which is completely different from Pokemon in general, which makes them extra stand out because every single part of those music tracks have a purpose. And they evoke a different emotion. Even the same song will evoke different emotions as it continues. I wish that I could just like, I might be having it play in the background right now. You might be hearing a music track from Legends Arceus, and you will notice that it changes and evolves as it goes before it ends. And it's not only that, but it has clear melodies, and is satisfying because of that. And a lot of that is missing from a lot of the music in Paldea. And, you know, say like Lumio City and X and Y is another example. But that wasn't an issue in previous games, such as like Black and White and Gold, Silver, Crystal, which I think had some of the best soundtracks in Pokemon, never had that issue either. They repeated tracks, and they had tracks that would play in different cities, even though it's the same song, you know, but the music tracks were good because they had clear melodies and they evolved as they played. And sure, they didn't have a clear beginning and end, but they clearly changed as they played, and then would eventually loop back into the beginning.
What I'm remembering from Legends Arceus, I think is it actually Eterna? Is it the Eterna Forest music? Whatever the version of Eterna Forest soundtrack in Legends Arceus, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I remember downloading it from YouTube, and it's like 19 minutes long. The full raw song is 20 minutes long because there's so many like changes and build-ups, and it kind of cools off, and then it comes back a little bit differently. Every other Pokemon game, the track will be 3 minutes long max. So I think you're making good points. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm not defending Paldea music for whoever's listening who prefers the Scarlet and Violet soundtrack. I'm sorry I can't defend you in this moment. Maybe we'll do this again later. But I'll play through Violet with the music on.
But I will say that there were good songs in Scarlet and Violet, particularly some battle themes that I've heard so far, and like you said, Area Zero. But for the most part, it's the same root music for the entire region. It's like, I think there's 3 different root songs, and they just shift between those 3 throughout the entire, and it's a big region, so you're hearing these songs a lot, and you're spending a lot of time there. So to hear them repeated ad nauseum, and some are better than others, but like it's just not enjoyable to hear that boring, repetitive root music over and over and over again. There's like some areas that change the music, like the lake, I think at the top left of the map has a different music track, and that one's nice. Okay. It's like very serene. It seems like it has some dynamicness to it, like it changes as it goes. Dynamic, that's the word I've been trying to think of.
I keep hearing about Toby Fox, who I think is the composer of these songs. Do you know anything about him? I know he's worked with other video games in the past.
Yeah, so he's the Undertale music designer.
Okay. Have not played Undertale.
Undertale has phenomenal music, and Toby Fox is known for mainly Undertale. He worked on the Battle Tower music in Sword and Shield, which was pretty good, and he did a few tracks in Scarlet and Violet. He didn't do the entire OST. I don't think. I hope not. He has a very particular style, and I definitely heard it in one of the tracks that I liked. I definitely heard his style. It was a battle I had against someone at the at one of the Team Star bases, but it wasn't a Team Star member. It was like a little kid. Anyways, I remember like thinking the music was really epic for this battle with this little kid, and I was like, why are they doing this? But it was kind of funny. But the music was really good.
I'm just thinking of this now. I'm pretty sure Masuda was always the one who was composing the music for Pokemon games. Is that correct?
Not always, but he did do the music for Gen 2, which was really good. So yeah.
I feel he hasn't been like doing most of the music. I thought that was always like his bread and butter.
I don't know if he's...
and he just stepped down last year. Like he's no longer working as a director or anything like that.
Well, he didn't step down. He stepped up. Yeah.
Yeah, he stepped up. He got promoted. Yeah.
I don't think he is responsible for all the music.
Okay.
He is responsible for a lot of good music tracks, though. He's actually a music composer, and has his own like music career outside of Pokemon. Like he is a musician, and I think that's what he does best, honestly.
Yeah.
Is music. So yeah, he's responsible for a lot of my favorite tracks, especially in Gen 2. If I remember correctly, he didn't do the music in Sword and Shield, but I really liked the music in Sword and Shield. I thought Sword and Shield actually had one of the strongest music.
You're right.
Pools.
He was he was not a composer for Sword and Shield, for the OST for Sword and Shield. Junichi Masuda is credited as a composer for the OST of Scarlet and Violet. I guess he's credited as a supervisor and composer. That doesn't necessarily mean he did the entire soundtrack. Obviously, Toby Fox is involved.
Yes, yeah, it's at least to some extent. I wonder which tracks Masuda did. I can see Masuda have done that lake track that I talked about, that nice lake track at the top left of the map. I can't imagine him being the one to have done the route music. There was some good city themes too, like the one in the desert. There's a city in the desert that has a really good music track. I can see him doing that one too. It seemed very reminiscent of his work as well. But yeah, I don't know all the specifics, but yeah, out of this category, music, which game do you think wins, Dusty?
Legends Arceus.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a clear-cut winner here that, on my side as well, that's Pokemon Legends Arceus. Just did music phenomenally better, 100%. Every music track in Legends was great, in my opinion. Even the, like, village theme, which I thought was the weakest one, was still decent, you know?
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that brings us to the category of the crafting and the gameplay loop, like, all of that, the things that go into the little experiences that create our bigger whole in Scarlet and Violet and Pokemon Legends Arceus. So we know that there is a big shift in crafting between the two. Pokemon Legends was more crafting resources for survival, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is more crafting resources for TMs. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just crafting TMs, which is for not survival, just for making a better team, I guess.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I feel like Pokemon has never really been, it's never been an item management or resource management style game, right? I've never been pressed for money. The only thing I've ever been pressed for was coins at the casino or what do you call it? At the game corner, right? You're always trying to get more coins, so you can get those high tier prizes. I think crafting was really interesting in Pokemon Legends Arceus. I think it actually, I wasn't too sure about it before the game came out, but over this last year playing Legends Arceus, I think crafting is kind of essential. It gave this like weight of urgency and kind of like it gave you a reason to literally keep collecting. I have so many items in my file of Scarlet, and like I sell things. Like I just randomly I pick up everything I find because it's just like all you gotta do is like run over it and just like pick it up, press A. It's so easy. But in Legends, I'm always like careful not to use up all of my Pokeballs or my items or whatever. And I do have plenty of items in that game. But like it gives me a reason to continue to like anytime I'm in the map and I see a boulder or a tree, let me just get some apricorns. Let me just get some more, some stones, so, whatever it might be. Like it just gives this importance and significance to everything. Every adventure, every time I leave the main town, it's like I'm on a little mission. So I think that's important to have in a game, right? Like if something's too easy, it's not a game. You're just like pressing A and the game auto plays. So I think that's something that was missing in Legends. I'm sorry, that was something that was missing in my Scarlet playthrough.
Yeah, this kind of goes with what I was saying about how Scarlet and Violet exists almost exclusively in menus, And you're right, like, you're never really running out of things. You're always just kind of pressing A in Scarlet and Violet compared to Legends, where it felt like resources and things for getting through the game were more scarce, and you had to try to kind of, succeed in that game. And you're constantly having to recraft resources, which I think, like, contributes to the definition of a gameplay loop, which is something that, like, it kind of sounds like there wasn't a gameplay loop in Scarlet and Violet. Like, a gameplay loop does not exist so much as you just kind of doing things in it.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. A lot of creators, friends, people I've never met, just creators in general, have been saying that there's an incredible gameplay loop. And I really don't feel like there's a loop. There is gameplay, and it is fun. But I'm not really seeing, like, what is incentivizing me to keep playing, other than the fact that I haven't actually played the entire game yet. Like, I'm still playing through my file. My gameplay loop for Pokemon games as of the last, like, 5 to 10 years has been like training or breeding for competitive Pokemon with the incentive of, like, I might get a shiny out of this, right? And then I have to EV train in order to battle. So that's its own loop, and I think that's valid. I think that is something that the Pokemon Company wants people to do, to invest into competitive, so then they sign up for tournaments. I think that's a total valid thing. But as far as the right, like, these games sold so well, which is something we haven't even talked about, right? Like, the fact that they sold 10 million units in 3 days. It's been 2 weeks now. I don't know how many games they've sold. But this game was marketed on the fact that it was open world. So that's really what we're trying to look at here today, right? Like, whether or not this game is a valid open world game. And as far as the gameplay loop goes, there's hardly any side quests.
Is there any? I haven't come.
Yeah, right. Like, this can go very deep. I guess I kind of, like, broadened the question. But as far as the gameplay loop goes, it's still fun. Like, this is a fun game. I like playing Scarlet and Violet, but I'm not feeling there's, like, no incentive to keep playing other than is this next, if I walk ahead a couple feet, is there going to be a new batch of shiny Pokemon, right? I'm rolling the dice for new shinies. That is the gameplay loop for me, which is, again, not a loop.
Yeah. I think
it's a line.
I think you've kind of contextualized something that's been in my head and I couldn't quite put it into words, and that was that there's not really any obstacles in your way in Scarlet and Violet so much as, like, so, like, let's say, when I say obstacle, like, recurring obstacles, there's no recurring obstacles, and there's no really huge obstacles either. But in Legends Arceus, like, if you run out of something, you have to, like, stop and craft it and make sure you have the resources to craft it. And if you don't, you have to go gather the resources to do it. Like, that is an obstacle that makes a game, like,
or an alpha Pokemon.
Yes, and it gives you, like, an incentive to have to keep going. It gives you these imposed obstacles that make you have to, like, do something to succeed. Whereas in Scarlet and Violet, it seems like the only obstacles are self-imposed. You have to, if you don't self-impose obstacles onto yourself, then you really don't have an incentive to keep playing. And I think that's part of why it's taken me so long to beat it. But not because I'm, like, wanting to take my time with the game particularly. I think it's just because I'm trying to convince myself it's worth hopping back into and continuing. And I know my partner feels the same. Like, we're like, why are we playing this game? Sometimes we'll be playing it and we're like, why are we playing this game? It's just kind of annoying. Like, we'll accidentally run into a small wild Pokemon we couldn't see and be like, oh, now we have to wait 20 seconds for it to give me a wall of text and then get out of this just so I can continue exploring. And that's just a self-imposed thing of wanting to explore. But that's not something that's, like, they tell you, like, you need to explore, right? It's just something you tell yourself you need to do.
That's a theme that a lot of people have touched on, where it's like Pokemon is so formulaic, right? Yeah. And it's based on the model of the game from 25 years ago, right? And there's things that are kind of redundant and just it pads on unnecessary game time, right? Like, a 20-second interaction isn't fun. It's just, like, part of the formula.
Yeah. Why do you think Nuzlocke exists? It's a self-imposed thing to try to have fun with a boring game. Yeah. Is what
I will push back. I don't think this is a boring game. I think it is fun. The world is we gave the point to Paldea as far as the region, right? Like, it's a big world. There's a lot to explore. I don't know if you've been finding these, like, random these like dark swords or like pillars that you right. Have you seen those? Have you seen any of those yet?
Yeah, I don't know what it is yet, but yeah.
There's like
again,
these
it's a
random
self-imposed
pillars.
thing where I have to like, am I interested enough to find out what those are? You know,
Yeah,
I'm sure there might be a good payoff, but
I am having fun with it. But I think this is again goes back to something we said earlier, where it's like they have to maintain what a core series Pokemon game is, and I think the way they do that is by limiting. It's not good for you and me, man, but like I think that there is a group of people who like Pokemon the way it is, right?
it's the people who are okay with like self-imposing things to have fun with it. In my opinion, I should backtrack. The game, like as a whole, may not be boring, but the gameplay mechanics are boring.
That's fair.
There's a tedium behind creating a competitive team. There's a tedium behind Pokemon battles in general, with how long they take, and the traditional formula, with how long they take. Like, I felt like the battles in Legends were way more riveting because they were fast-paced, and they actually, I felt, in my opinion, felt more strategic.
I wish there were more battles in Legends Arceus, like more trainer battles.
Me too, yeah.
With that system. I thought the system was really good.
I thought it was really good too, yeah. I wish there was more as well. I agree, 100%. Whereas we have a bunch of them in Scarlet and Violet, but half the time I'm like, I don't feel like going into a Pokemon battle right now because it's just going to take me 20 minutes to beat one Pokemon because not because it's going to be hard to beat that Pokemon, but because the menus are so slow, the game chugs, and the battles are not interesting.
I don't want to spend 2 minutes capturing a Bergmite for the Dex when in Legends, all I had to do was throw a feather ball and I got it, right? But that's fun. That's a lot of fun.
That's all we had to do in that game.
One thing that we didn't mention earlier about Pokemon interactions in the overworld, I appreciate the size variations of some of the Pokemon. I think that kind of helps with the immersion. You're right, it is annoying that you don't see it and you enter a battle. I think there can be some value in that. I think that's kind of nice. It's annoying. It's definitely annoying, but it almost gives me the same feeling of what like random encounters used to be back in the day, right? It's kind of like that. Like you're going through the field and you accidentally run into something that you didn't see because it's so small or it's shrouded in the grass.
But I'm not random saying it's good or bad. I never thought random encounters were good.
No, they're not good.
Especially in an open world game, you should be able to choose your pathing and your battles. You should be able to choose your battles, you know? In Breath of the Wild, you choose your battles. If you see a big group of enemies, you can walk the other way. And they're very visible. In Pokemon Legends, if you see a Pokemon, you can choose whether to engage with it either by catching or battling it, or just going away.
But I think there's a challenge there, which is we've established that challenge can be good. I feel like there's a challenge there where it's like if there's an alpha and you didn't see it and stumbled upon it, it's going to roar, knock you off your bike, and then the other Pokemon are going to start attacking you. So
But it doesn't take you out of the action. It actually puts you into action, whereas in Scarlet and Violet, it takes you out of the action. The action in Scarlet and Violet is exploring. It's not the Pokemon battles. It takes you out of the action, puts you into this boring, like I said, boring battle that you probably are just going to try to run from anyways because you were busy exploring. So it's like it's just a waste of time, and it's a waste. It's a waste of a mechanic. The core series
of Pokemon games, we play them because they're Pokemon games and because there's Pokemon in the game.
Yes.
They're fun. They're fun to explore and discover new Pokemon. Right. That's why we play the games. The magic of Legends is that it actually gave us a new experience, something that we don't get from any other Pokemon game. So,
it gave us that experience you just explained in a way that doesn't like get in the way of us having that experience. Whereas Scarlet and Violet gives us that experience as well, but it has things that get in the way of us having that experience. Yeah. Which is a darn shame. And I think, I don't know for me, Pokemon Legends wins this category. And then there's side quests in Pokemon Legends, and they were great. And like I said, I haven't even seen a side quest in Scarlet and Violet. So gameplay loop be damned.
Oops. Legends gets this one too.
Oops. So Legends wins 4 out of the 5 of these categories.
And what's the thing is though, like the reason why I'm actually having so much fun with like with Scarlet and Violet is that there are a lot of things in the game that weren't present in Legends Arceus, right? We have to remember that Legends is a single player experience, right? Like, and it's a totally different game. Like I said, we've never had a game like that before, a Pokemon game like that before. But Scarlet and Violet, even though it doesn't match the intention and the cohesiveness of Legends. It has battling. It has the global trading. It has raids. Those are those are really fun things that we haven't really talked about. That I think do give Scarlet and Violet the edge. Maybe the only reason why we didn't talk about it is because other Pokemon games have those too. Those are just kind of built-in features. They're not like exclusive to Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah, I suppose multiplayer is another thing we should give a point to Scarlet and Violet for, but that still makes 2 against 4 points. But you're right. Yes, multiplayer is definitely superior in Scarlet and Violet, but again, it's not necessarily riveting multiplayer. Like, raids are okay, but the main reason I want to do the raids isn't even to catch the Pokemon that I probably already caught in the overworld anyway. It's to get the items. For me personally, it might be different for other people, but and I don't think it's particularly like fun. It's like, okay, can we like spam enough super effective moves in time to beat this Pokemon? Yes or no?
I think it's fun. I did it with I did it with some friends online, and it was fun because it was challenging, and we're like talking to each other like, okay, well, you got to use this move. It was fun. I think it's the best version of raids that we've ever had. I think it's better than Pokemon Go, which is where it originated from. It's better than Sword and Shield,
hands down.
Yeah, and it's in some ways, it is better than Sword and Shield. I guess I was thinking about Dynamax raid dens, or what are they called?
Yeah, this is way
the
better
feature.
Than that.
It is fun. And seriously, I'm looking forward to another, like what they gave us in the DLC with the max raid dungeons, where you kind of like traverse all these like different levels and then end with the legendary. I'm looking forward to doing that, but in this, I hope there's like 10 rounds that you got to go through because they're so much quicker.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing with that. But yeah, so let's just do a general too. Like, I have 2 questions that we should both answer. One of them is, which game is just the better gameplay experience, and which one do we prefer personally?
Gameplay experience. Again, I might be a little bit biased just with like how recently and how much I've played Legends, but I do feel like that's fun. I also miss the shiny. I really wish shiny Pokemon sparkled in the overworld, right?
And there are so many. Violet,
there were so many things in Scarlet and Violet that like take me out of the world. We didn't even talk about performance, man. Like
we
that
did.
really
We did graphics. We kind of.
It takes me out of the game so much. Yeah. The lagging is incredibly frustrating, right? The glitches, seeing debugging Pokeballs or Ultra Balls all over the region is so weird. I don't want to harp on the negative because it is a fun game. I think they can improve it. I think I'm such an apologist. I really hope that the next iteration, the next Generation 9 game is Scarlet and Violet, but better, because Legends it really does feel like a full package, right?
But we say that every generation. We say like, okay,
what if
Gen 8 it's gonna be better, right? And Gen 9 it's gonna be better, right?
Well, it did
Gen
get
10,
better.
It's gonna be better, right?
Yeah.
Well, but they also take away just as much as they give. You know, like you said, the performance is it's somehow worse than Sword and Shield, which is like, we thought that was impossible.
Somehow worse than Legends.
I mean, Legends had good performance in my opinion. So like, and I don't get how it's worse than Legends.
Yeah, Legends is good.
Anyways, it's crazy to me. To me, I think the better gameplay experience is Pokemon Legends, and I prefer Pokemon Legends. That's both my objective and subjective opinions.
The only way, if you count the entire Pokemon experience of trading and battling, competitive, open world, shiny hunting, new Pokemon, new Pokedex, new characters, raids, if you count all of that, I think Scarlet and Violet are a better game. But because of how focused Legends is, I think it's like, no, it's not a core series game in that way. But because of how focused it is, that's a game that I want to keep playing over and over again over the years.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, Scarlet and Violet, like, there's definitely a group that it appeals to. that makes it a superior gameplay experience for them.
Yeah.
But in general, if you're gonna recommend something to the average player, I would still definitely go for Pokemon Legends.
Legends is the only game I recommend to non-Pokemon fans. Yes. They go, should I get this game? I go, no, get Legends. You're gonna like Legends.
I do the same exact thing.
Yeah, Legends is so good.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, this was a great discussion. I hope that you, the audience, enjoyed listening to Dustygogoat and I ramble on and on about just the world of Pokemon and you know, the inferiorities and superiorities of game to game. But yeah, Dustygogoat, you have a YouTube channel titled Dustygogoat. I will have links to you in the description.
Yeah. Can I plug something?
Go ahead. Plug what you want.
We just launched a brand new podcast, Hidden Power. It's a Pokemon podcast coming out every single week. If you liked hearing me right here for an hour, go check out Hidden Power. I also have a YouTube channel, but Hidden Power, I'm so proud of it. We got 3 episodes up right now.
Oh, and while you guys are at it, tell them to invite me to the next one. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. Johnny, we would love to have you on. We really would. Yeah, we really would.
No, you don't have to. I'm totally joking.
No, we would love to have you on, dude. We really would. We haven't had any guests yet, so it's not even on my mind. We're just trying to launch the thing. But yeah, it's always a pleasure to be on your channel, man. Appreciate it.
And vice versa. Sometimes I'm featured on your channel as well. So make sure that you guys subscribe to Dustygogoat so that you don't miss either of us, and subscribe to me as well. And subscribe to that podcast channel. What was it? It was
Hidden Power.
Hidden Power Podcast. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you guys got lots of great content to go subscribe and consume. And yeah,
consume it while you're playing Scarlet and Violet.
Exactly. And we're all involved in it. So if you want to see more of us, you know, these are the places to be. All right. Love you guys. Continue watching the channel with some more videos I'll have linked right after, you know, right now. and catch up with us on our channels. Catch y'all later.
See ya.